Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We don't have microphones, handheld microphones, but there are microphones in the ceiling up here, so you should be able to hear what you're saying. Okay? And if anyone has any trouble hearing, just let us know. Okay, welcome to the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. I'm Mary Johnson. I'm a facilitator along with Laura McCletty, Carlinia Alfred Canty, Jackie Walton Edwards, Nathalie McGarrath, and she's on the front. She's our timekeeper. Winston Robinson and Steve Johnston and Sarita Carroll. We're just going to open this up with a prayer.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's please that we pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the gift of today, Tuesday, October the 4th, 2022. You're there to greet us every morning with your grace and loving kindness. We invite you to walk with us, guide us, every footstep. Let your goodness and mercy go with us, and your glory shine upon our faces. Bless our nation, bless our state, bless our county, our city, and our neighborhoods. Bless this forum today, and God remember Sarah Stevenson. Yes. Bless the children every place. It's in your son Jesus' name. We love and thank you. Let us say together, amen.
Amen.
Okay, our forum runs from 8:30 to 9:45. At that time, we'll take announcements. Any other announcements can be sent to Steve at sjohnston@tuesdayforumcharlotte.org. Okay, do we have any first timers here this morning? Don't have any first timers. Okay. We also have a virtual.
Hold on, woman.
Yeah.
Hello.
Oh, me? Oh, it's not my first time, just first time in person.
That's what we need. First time here.
Okay.
Oh,
Do we have any first timers?
Oh, sure.
Just came in. Any first timers?
Been a while.
First time being here. Oh, you've been here before. Okay, thank you. Okay, today our guests are, we have judges and we also have soil and water conservation. I'm going to say their names. We have Darren Jackson, Court of Appeals, Carolyn Thompson, Court of Appeals, Kimberly Best, Superior Court, Donald Curitin, Superior Court, and Nancy Carter, Soil and Water Conservation. Okay.
And Barbara.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara.
Likewise.
Likewise, I'm sorry. Soil and Water Conservation. Okay. What we do, and I know all of you've been here before, but what we do is we have each person to introduce themselves. We're going to give you 2 minutes to introduce yourself and your office, and then we're going to take questions from the audience, and they're going to raise their hands, and we're going to call on them. You don't have to call on them. We'll call on them in the order that they raise their hands. Okay, so you'll have, since we have 6 people here, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to ask your questions. That's it, 30 seconds to ask your questions. And then if you want to ask a particular person, that would be great. That would save a lot of time. If not, if you want everyone to answer, that's okay too. If everyone's going to answer, be as brief as you can. I know it's hard, but be as brief as you can. So we're going to get started. Let's start over here with Ms. Thompson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Thompson, running for the North Carolina Court of Appeals, seat number 8. It's the open seat on your ballot. 26 years in, being a prior district court judge for over 10 years, superior court judge, trial attorney, domestic violence advocate. I live in Oxford with my husband, and we're thankfully empty nesters. And we're pushing forward to uphold our Constitution on this ballot. So please remember to vote for the judges when you go. Don't just stop at the top. Please remember the judges.
Good morning, everyone. Judge Kimberly Best, Superior Court Judge, running to keep my seat as Superior Court Judge in District 26B, That area involves zip codes 28277, 28270, and parts of 28210 in South Charlotte area. We attended District Court Judges School, new District Court Judges School together, served as a District Court Judge for 13 years and 11 months, and have been a Superior Court Judge since then. So I'm at a total of 14 years, 10 months now, serving you as a judge. Previously served as a magistrate here, actually under the supervision of Judge Evans, and previously a teacher, Spanish teacher at J.T. Williams Middle School, bankruptcy court in private practice, practiced in bankruptcy, federal criminal defense. And as a district court judge, I practiced in every area possible. As a district court judge, certified juvenile judge, juvenile crime prevention counsel, I could keep going on, and now serving as a superior court judge. I firmly believe my philosophy is justice is not one size fits all. That means that each and every person that appears before me will not receive a routine resolution to their problem. That resolution and my decision will be based solely upon the facts and the individual issues that appear before me. I ask for you to continue to support me as you've done the past 14 years and 10 months. This is my 5th election. And just remember that you have a choice. For Superior Court Judge, I have the superior experience. I am the best choice. Vote for Judge Kimberly Best. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Judge Darren Jackson. I'm from Wake County. I currently serve on the Court of Appeals. I am running to keep that seat 11. I was appointed in December of 2020 by Governor Cooper. Prior to that appointment, I was in a small town practice for 25 years. I like to tell people I didn't do everything, but I did almost everything. I did small claims court, district court, superior court, appellate court. I did industrial commission, administrative agency appeals, municipal law, really about everything you can do, except I stayed out of bankruptcy court as much as I could. And I didn't do much immigration because immigration's a big area here in Charlotte because this is where the immigration court is. But if you catch a case in Raleigh for immigration, you have to come to Charlotte. And so our firm generally did not do those cases. We referred those out to other people. I am running for the seat that I currently hold. I am not running against Ms. Thompson. We have 4 seats, Court of Appeals, that are on the ballot this year. I'm running against a district court judge from here in Mecklenburg County, Michael Staddy. I'm here to answer any questions you have. I have some information. I could refer you to my website. I've been a judge for about 20 months now. I've written over 110 opinions. Judges aren't really allowed to talk about issues and how we rule on particular cases, but I do have a record. You can look it up for yourself. I think you find that I treat everybody fairly that comes before me and don't make decisions based on any inappropriate characteristics of the person, political party, anything like that. So I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Donald Curtin. I'm a district court judge and have been so for almost 12 years. I am currently running for a Superior Court seat in District 26A that covers Mint Hill, Matthews, Myers Park, Eastover, and a little bit of South Charlotte. So it is a uniquely drawn district. Certainly you can go to my website, judgecuritan.com, to see the map as it exists, as well as the precincts for the voting sites. I have served in every area in district court, that is family, civil, juvenile, and criminal. My specialization is juvenile law. I am state certified to handle those types of cases, and presently I am primarily in adult criminal. I believe I am uniquely qualified to hold this position. I definitely look forward to answering all the questions that you may have about my credentials, as well as what I would do in this particular role. If you are unaware, Superior Court handles felony matters, felony criminal matters, as well as civil disputes over $25,000. So it takes us away from the family and the juvenile cases, but all of that is intertwined, and I do believe my experience will help me be able to handle these matters in a unique way. So I look forward again to answering your questions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Bleiweiss. It always rhymes with fried rice when you see it next time. And I call myself bottom of the ballot Barbara. I can enjoy that because literally it's the last name before you hit send after you vote for all these guys. And Nancy, my sister. I'm going for my second term, my second 4-year term with the Soil and Water Conservation District. And I'm proud to say that the program that I had talked about 4 years ago with this team about expanding agriculture and farms and so forth is very close to happening. It was a huge lesson that it takes 4 years, and maybe that's fast for some. It seems like a snail's pace for me. But regardless, I'm excited to say that we are working on a farmland preservation plan, and it is being supported by the county. We haven't gotten it approved yet, but that will add acreage, it will add jobs. There is a focus on making sure that we provide new farms, new farmland to new and beginning farmers, which covers Black, brown people, immigrants, women, etc. We're modeling it after a program in rural Atlanta where it's been very successful. And so with these partnerships, we're going to be able to impact food security, regional food security, and so forth for the entire region, with Charlotte-Mecklenburg as being the driver. And I'm thankful that you guys have given me the opportunity to do this. So again, Barbara Bleiweiss, Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, bottom of the ballot, Barbara. Thank you.
She is never at the bottom, I assure you. I'm Nancy Carter. I have been before you 10 times, sitting you here in this spot, asking for your support, and thank you for it. It is such an honor. I judge it to be an honor to sit in this assembly today. Thank you for the opportunity. We work for educating children to new careers and how to make this world a better world, looking at clean water and healthy soil and how to do it. It's been my privilege to work to build bridges between rural and urban. And people have seen that I've done that. I'm now in a national committee dealing with those issues. I serve on the executive for the state organization, and I'm on the national board. Somebody thinks I'm doing it right. So I ask you to think I'm doing it right and support us. We are a team. Barbara and I work together. And when you get two strong women grounded in the soil, in the water, playing in the mud, you've got a team. And we look forward to serving you again with your support. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start with Tommy is the first question, followed by Jackie and Winston.
Yeah, my concern is Black males, and the system seems like it's using Black males as a commodity. Just like they go to the prison they sell them uniforms and shoes and food and stuff. And I want to know what can be done to change this, where Black males have jobs, can support their family. It seems like ever since slavery, Black males have been targeted in America. And it's really disturbing to me as a man 75 years old, that if you go to a prison, you know, I thought we were having eclipse one Sunday I rode by Camp Green when they had it. And I thought we was having a sun eclipse of so many Black men on the yard and nobody else. I want to know what can we do for the Black male where he's not just a commodity for the system. That's my question to the judges.
So, as a judge sitting on the bench, specifically in the 9th Judicial District, which covers Henderson, Granville, Warren, Franklin, and Person counties, I can tell you that any given day, looking out in the audience in the courtroom could have easily been my family reunion. That's where we are. That's unfortunately in this day and time, that's where we are in the system. And so as a district court judge and a superior court judge, we rely on community resources, we rely on community programs, because when we're giving that disposition or given an opportunity to bring resources back into the Black home or back to the Black male juvenile, for example, in juvenile court, we rely and pull on resources. The bad day is when, as a judge, you have no resources because funding is gone. Programs that started off, really good, and we could order that person complete that certain program rather than go down the pipeline of the criminal justice system, those programs get pulled. And so we are limited from a judicial point if we don't have the resources to pull from the community, because you really can't rely on all government-based programs. We need creativity back in our community to take the community back to address the needs. There's something wrong when you can determine at third grade the path. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a preacher, so I got on my soapbox. I'm sorry. There you go.
I would like to take the opportunity to respond to that briefly. It's not really a question you can answer briefly, so hopefully all of us will give a little part of it. For me, and she's right, resources. In Mecklenburg County, we have tons of resources. We have a lot of community-based partnerships. We have a lot of private entities that provide services, specifically reentry programs. I personally have friends who have reentry programs, and at one point, reentry wasn't an option. Myself and Judge Cureton, along with a couple of other judges, tried to encourage allowing those reentering society, those coming from out of prison, that at a county and city level, that we actually create opportunities for them. Because if you say you're going to be about it, that's fine. You can talk about how good it is, but let's put some action behind it. That was punted to the county because the county has, under criminal justice services, a reentry program. Well, when Donald Cureton and I'm sorry, I keep throwing out Donald's, I'm gonna stop Donald. But when we met with the reentry program, what we found out is that they had only serviced about 100 people reentering society from either prison or jail. What my good friend, who's a former lawyer who served federal time, had presented to me, she created a booklet that I presented to those, is that approximately 3,000 people re-enter Mecklenburg County out of that system, and a majority of them are Black men. And so I'm saying the only thing we can do at this point is going to come from the grassroots level. It's going to come from the community. But as a judge, I knew about Exodus Foundation, which was a reentry program before reentry was talked about. I knew about some of the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council awardees that focused on young Black males and older Black men. I knew about the GAP program, a gang intervention program over at First Baptist Church West, which primarily focused on our young men involved, brown and Black young men, our Spanish-speaking young men, Black and brown young men. There were not a lot of programs for young ladies, but of course the focus is young men. So I'm saying there are a lot of things that can be done, but where it starts is with policy. I think the Sheriff's Department actually just entered a policy saying you can't arrest someone if they have expired tags. I think it was for expired tags or a tail light, not arrest someone, you can't even pull them over. That's the Sheriff's Department, and we know they don't write most of the tickets. But when you look at who those, my time's up. Okay, somebody may pick up for me.
So the Court of Appeals, the policy decisions that can be made in district court and superior court regarding charges, bail, unsecured bonds, all those things, pretrial deferrals, all those decisions have already been made. So at our level, all I can do is try to review each and every case and make sure the law is applied uniformly and make sure it's fairly, make sure that someone in Mecklenburg County is being treated the same way as someone in Craven County, that they're not treated differently. And, in my mind, having served 12 years in the legislature and have practiced in many of our courts across the state, it really does come down to resources. We've made a lot of positive steps forward with things like bandbox, a greater opportunity to expunge things so people get second chances in life, which is very important so they can get a job and don't stay in that downward spiral. And so we have to do a lot more, but unfortunately, a lot of those things are policy positions that come from the legislature, as well as the money, funding to do these programs also comes from the legislature.
So your question was what can we do, right? And I think when you listen to the answers that have been provided, it's twofold. One, there has to be an institutional policy change to, as judges, obviously we're individual. We work for you, right? We don't work for any particular person. We don't have a boss. You are our bosses. So hearing the voices of the people, obviously we have to make decisions, one, that are made in accordance with the law, but when we have the discretion to implement something that can possibly benefit someone, we have to know what exists, and we have to make sure that our decisions take into account those things that you're talking about. We have to have a good understanding of biases. We have to have a good understanding of what are some of the challenges that this individual might be facing. We have to understand the root cause of their problems. If we don't ask those questions, we're never going to get the answer that you're looking for. So we have to start there. Then secondly, there has to be the personal community-based response. That's what you're hearing. When we talk about resources, it's more than just money. We're talking about people. If I was having this conversation yesterday with someone, and we were talking about, the problem that we run into as a bureaucracy is that we want everything to be evidence-based. So that's everything has to be data-driven. So if I recommend a program, it has to have some kind of result tied to it. And the reality is, some of these programs, the results are not really what we're looking for. When I was growing up here and attending West Charlotte Rec Center, or Earl Village, or all the other places that my dad worked, it wasn't evidence-based. That was somebody that was pouring into me, right? But they don't have that as much now. And so when I'm having these conversations with kids and parents, the struggle is I can only do it from the bench, right? It's going to take the other people on the other side of the bench to then surround them and do the things that need to be done. I can try to be the orchestrator, but I can't personally get involved in that child's life. That's the frustrating part. I can do it from one side, but not the other. So those are some of the challenges that we have in answering those questions.
Okay, Jackie. Good morning. Thanks so much for coming today. I know that there are some questions that this is just for the judicial candidate. I know there are some questions that you can't answer, but if you can you give your thinking on controversial results from federal elections being considered with the with the judges, and now they're looking at the General Assembly. Do you understand what I'm asking you?
I may. Are we referring to the Moore case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, just going to say it. What do you think? I know you can't comment, but Moore case. So what the Moore case is, everyone, the Moore case is a case that is pending before the United States Supreme Court. It is coming out of North Carolina. And what that case essentially argues is that it argues independent legislature, that when it comes to federal elections, that state Supreme Courts cannot pass judgment on what happens in federal elections. It essentially, in my review of the summary that I've been given, I'll be honest, I have not read the briefs. It reminds me of the argument of states' rights. I cannot say one way or another how I would rule on that decision, because Superior Court judges at times can sit on cases involving important constitutional issues. I am still a plaintiff in one such case that is still pending at our North Carolina Supreme Court on whether or not these districts that I and others are running in, whether they were drawn with a racial tilt, shall we say. Because I've been told I can't say the word, that G word. So that's what she's referring to. And what it is that when you talk about your federal decisions and voting, it all trickles down. if this case, based on the way the Supreme Court is currently construed, and I'll be honest, I don't believe that just because, someone's appointed by a Republican president or a Democratic president, that automatically tells us how they're going to vote. And I think Justice Roberts is a really good example of that. You never know which way he may tilt. But if where we are now continues, if stare decisis is not honored, if past decisions of the Supreme Court are not honored, then we could very well be back to a states' rights country, which the decision regarding Roe v. Wade has led us to, right? Each state gets to decide what parameters they want to place on abortion. Well, this will be the same thing regarding federal elections, voting rights, who can vote, who can register to vote, and things of that nature. So I will say that my thoughts are that people need to get engaged. People need to get out to vote. And I think to take it back to what we were talking about earlier, I heard Stacey Abrams on Steve Harvey's show on my way over here. And she said, she talked about how Black men are not engaged and how we need to get them re-engaged because there tends to be a distrust of the political system, and how with Black men and Black women together that we are a very important voting bloc, because I think the rank is, Black women, white women, then white men, and then Black men are at the bottom, and that there is a reason for that. And we need to recognize that historical perspective. But people need to understand, as much as they may be dissatisfied with that historical perspective and the distrust, that it's all on the table for real. We say that every election, but we've seen the evidence, I think, from our current Supreme Court. And I'll leave it at that.
Are there others that want to weigh in quickly?
She said it perfectly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she covered. Yeah, I think she
Good morning. My question is actually for the two candidates for soil and water. So I'm a native of Charlotte, and growing up, I remember my father, we would just ride around, and he would spot out toxic waste dumps that are close, near, or around Black neighborhoods. I wanted to know what that actually means or what that is, and what does justice look like for those communities that were positioned around these wastelands.
You've been working on we are not a regulatory board, so we cannot come down and judge a problem such as that. We deal with eroding streams, keeping soil in place, but working with people to adjust environmental issues. I did that on city council. If you remember, Susan Burgess, Patsy Kinsey, and I, started the Environment Committee on City Council. And they're the ones who are addressing issues such as this right now. I am part of the climate leaders here with Jennifer Roberts, Nikisha Glover, et cetera. We're looking at environmental justice. So what we do is use our position as a springboard to get involved in other groups that can work on toxic issues like coal ash that has again been discovered in Mountain Island Lake, which is our water source. Environmental justice to me means moving the emissions facilities that the city had out of endangered areas, like the bus repair job. I worked on that, where the buses were located, where they were repaired. It looks at factories, et cetera, that are polluting the water, and that's source pollution. So again, that does not interface with what we do, but it's something that we can raise an environmental voice about. Thank you for the question.
Christy? Okay, for staying there, couldn't take my mask. Okay, so to work on cleaning up, I guess, the dirt, the sand, what about the toxic seeds from, you say, Monsanto, that's being forced on farmers? it really doesn't matter if the dirt is clean, if the seed is toxic, the food that we're eating. So does your board, like, do you have any regulations or anything to prohibit, I guess, Monsanto from just distributing those seeds to that good soil?
Again, we're not regulatory, and I hear what you're saying. I've had the privilege of being able to be in some leadership circles where we talked exactly about what you say, toxic seed and so forth. And so I have a little bit of a different perspective, and I hear what you're saying, and I also recognize a lot of the media and the articles about Monsanto and the seeds and possibly causing cancer. What I will share with you is that in the circles I've been with Syngenta is the company that we've worked with, and they're in that same group as Monsanto. Is they do a lot to make sure that the seed that they provide to the very large farms. So I'm going to put our farms here separate, for, if you will, that deal with drought resistance, that deal with disease resistance and so forth. And so at least in the circles I've been, to say it would be toxic, I haven't seen evidence of it, not to say that you haven't. To our point, we don't get involved with telling farmers what they can do. What we do, however, is we do promote practices, and I'm going to use the term you may have heard called regenerative. And it goes back to having the soil and doing organic amendments that help nature sustain itself. We promote those. We're all about voluntary conservation. We work with USDA programs and state programs that promote those. I'll use the word natural. We have to be careful about saying what you can and can't do, because farmers, for example, they may raise, they have beef and they rely on certain processes, things that their daddies taught them, and it's been helping them make a living, right? To force a government regulation, which we don't like to do, that says, well, this is really better for the entire community. And while that could be true, what we'd be asking them to do is forego their livelihoods for a few years, which nobody wants to do. So we walk a little bit of a balance, okay? We promote regenerative, we promote natural, we promote organic, but we work with those farmers that are willing to work with us to transition, but we fall short of telling them what they can and can't do, right? But we try to stay on top of the science about what you may hear on social media versus what science says, and that's an ongoing basis, right? But I encourage you to keep talking with us because of the program that I alluded to earlier. We promote those regenerative, sustainable, and not to use pesticides and not to use those kinds of seeds. But ultimately, it would be up to the farmer to decide. It goes back. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
And there's another point there that you're making, and I really appreciate it. If you do something good, we try to reward it. And I'm working right now on Urban Soil Health Championship. That's been recognized in the farms, and farmers get rewarded for this. And there's a whole group to educate other farmers about this because of what we're doing. I want to do the same thing in urban sites. In this group, we're a minority. We're women. We're not white men. We're not conservative. We're urban, and we want to take action. So what Barbara and I are doing is pretty unusual in the group where we serve. And so I'm working on getting urban people who take brown fields and make something good out of it, who take wasteland and make community gardens. I want recognition for people who do things like that so that we can raise it up and say, this is the model. You will be recognized for something good for the community. So it's not the stick, it's the lollipop. The carrot.
The carrot.
The carrot.
Agriculture's going to be carrot.
You missed that.
That's right.
Good morning. My name is Earl Owens III. I work for Genesis Project One, which is a behavioral health agency. And as my elder was just speaking, he was actually talking about me. You know, he was actually talking about a person, you know, that has experienced incarceration and that has, at least I myself have overcome that challenge, right? But there are many of us, especially Black men, that have not been afforded the opportunity for educational and, you know, these resources that you're talking about, you know, to break that cycle. You know, and you as judges, you know, you guys are kind of handcuffed because you're a judge. You're not the police. You're not the district attorney. You're not the attorneys. You know, all you do is judge what's going on. But you, Carolyn Thompson, you spoke about Vance County and places that up there, right? So my agency actually has a peer site up there. And what has happened is we have not been afforded any resources to apply to the Black communities. You see what I'm saying? So we're actually up there trying to provide behavioral health services along with reentry services to people to get, employment opportunities, employment training, education, behavioral health, substance use, and these things. But as this Judge Aaron alluded to about the funding being shifted. So my question is how do we, as a people, raise enough noise to get these funds reverted back so that we can provide equal opportunities for our returning citizens and for the community, period?
Did you have anything you want to hear from everyone?
I mean, all of it. I mean, this happened here in Mecklenburg County too. I mean, where there's lawsuits, right now against the MCOs, for discrimination, against Black-owned behavioral health agencies and things like that. My agency is in the midst of one now. So we do have the people out there that are fighting the fight, but the system is working against us because it appears to me like they only want a small percentage of us to be successful. So I'm just asking, like, what can we do?
Well,
Can anybody respond?
well, it's hard to respond because when you talk about having conflict, it could lead to litigation. You could end up in court, and one of us could be hearing that case or a case similar to that. When I think of behavioral health in general, I view one of the biggest things that we could do is to expand Medicaid, right? And all that federal funding that would come with that. And then it's part of the legislative process to try to get in where that money is going to be going. And so you've got to advocate with your legislative delegation, which I know you're going to be hearing from in the next couple of weeks, about getting, I guess, a more fair piece of that pie. But it's not only the legislators, because then there are grants to go down to the county. And so there are multiple opportunities for the division of that funds. And unfortunately, you have to be strong and advocate with all of them. There's not just one. But right now, you're fighting over a small pool of dollars that the state has. And if we could expand Medicaid, you'd be fighting over a much bigger pool of dollars that would be available for these things. And so, that's what I would encourage you to do, is come to the next several meetings when the legislative delegations are going to be here and the county commissioners and ask those exact same questions of what they're going to do.
So I almost kind of look at this as, so in a former life, I wanted to be an entertainment lawyer, right? So I interned with a record label in New York. And I used to pay attention, like, how these people were getting deals. And so you could either be the person who goes with the major label. That's essentially what all of us are. We're trying to get the major label funds. Or you can be the independent artist, and you can create your own. And then they have no choice but to give you whatever it is that they have. The hard part is trying to create your own. So you're having to try to build a community of people who are supporting you so that people recognize the work that you're doing. Or you have to find out where are these dollars coming from, as Judge Jackson just indicated. Who's holding the purse string? And those are the people that you have to wrangle in order to convince them for you to get that money. I think you always start there, because that's what it's always about, right? Who holds the purse strings? So you always start there, and then if that's the way you want to go. Otherwise, you got to do it as kind of like the independent artist. You got to be the Master P of this to some degree. You understand?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. However,
but we don't respond.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just get the question. Now we got Rondra, then Bobby Shields, then Miko.
So my question is, how do you identify, you have a lot of drug addicts that are going through the system, but then they're end up criminals also. So how do you identify the drug addicts that need to go to drug treatment or the real criminals need to go to prison? So that's a big population that's going to prison. I had a person that go to prison, being a drug addict, 13 years. I thought that was insane. So
I guess we'll tackle this one. All right. So I think we've been doing it long enough to where we can identify the underlying reasons for someone's behavior. And if we recognize, I handle first appearance court a great deal. If I find out from the very beginning that that is part of their history, then I'm trying to figure out how can I connect them to substance abuse treatment immediately, even pre-resolution of their charges. Because the data does show that the earlier you can address that issue when it's fresh, the more receptive they are to actually doing it. You understand? So in our recovery course, I handle DWI recovery course. Judge Best has done recovery court and wellness court for years. We have a pre-plea court. So people can start getting these services intensively earlier on, even before their case is resolved, just, because they want to, they understand the significance of this. They might actually get their sentences, if they ultimately have to plead guilty or are found guilty, get their sentences reduced significantly as a result of their participation in the program. If we know that that's the reason, we want to help address that reason because we know so much good can come from that treatment afterwards. Now, once you get to certain levels, unfortunately, if they plead guilty, our hands might be tied because of structured sentencing. But if we have the discretion to help reduce things, we want to do that. Okay.
I will say that having a older brother, I'm one of four. So my older brother is a recovering, an addict in recovery. And he probably admits that. Eventually went back to school, got his master's in social work, and now he helps those individuals. My younger brother, due to lead poisoning, they've heard me say this, suffers. He's severely intellectually disabled, autistic, and severely emotionally impaired, once again, because of the lead. Because once it gets in your system, it can't come out. And sometimes that exhibits as a mental health issue. When in fact the person or the child has been lead poisoned. I'm going to echo what Judge Cureton said, but I am also going to note that that's what I call my lived experience. And because of my lived experience and because of my experience on the court, I recognize those signs. As a Superior Court judge, I will tell you that when I look at mitigating factors that I can take into consideration, substance use or substance use disorder or substance abuse is not a mitigating factor. I don't decide the mitigating factors. I can say it's another mitigating factor if the person has actually had an issue and then obtained treatment. But even within structured sentencing, there's only so far I can go. There are facilities that have treatment built into the system. But some of our penal systems and institutions don't offer rehabilitative opportunities. And that's something we have to keep in mind. Once again, going back to the legislature, going back to those directors. I learned in law school that the purpose of the criminal justice system is to rehabilitate, to deter, to restore, that's the term restorative justice you've heard of, and to punish. And we focus on punishing, we focus on punishment and deterrence, but we forget about restorative justice, restoring justice, and we forget about rehabilitation because eventually, unless they're in jail for the rest of their life, they eventually are going to re-enter society. There's only so much we can do as judges. So I can take into account those mitigating factors. But I ask attorneys, and when I was in the court, with Judge Cureton, when I was in there, my first question was, are you married? Do you have any children? Are you employed? Have you graduated from high school? Any college? If they didn't graduate from high school, part of their conditions of release were to go and enroll in some GED or high school diploma completion program. I would send them to Tar Heel Challenge or my other program, which I cannot think of right now. Oh gosh. Anyway, I can't think of it, but there was another program operated by actually quite a few young African-American males who we also use in juvenile court, but I can't think of the name. If they didn't have an employment, then I would try and send them to, a program through our child support court now to try and attend their program for job training, or I would say check with Goodwill and or the Salvation Army for their training programs. If there was a substance use disorder, condition of your release is that you go and enroll, obtain an assessment within 48 hours, and you go and comply with the treatment, and tell the lawyer to have them assessed for one of our treatment courts, either drug court or wellness court, which is mental health court. Oftentimes, I would tell you that's something the AOC arguably should be paying for, but we are lucky in Mecklenburg County. Our county, going back to resources, our county pays for our treatment courts. They cut it at one point. They do fund a couple of courts throughout the state. The AOC does, because I've had the opportunity to work in the mountains the first 6 months. But our courts are largely funded by our county, which we should be thankful for, but we should also keep in mind that it's part of the court system. And why isn't the administrative office of the courts funding more treatment courts? Because they work.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that because I practiced in Superior District Court for 25 years, and I saw in a large county, and I saw how well treatment courts worked. If you've never had the chance, go to a graduation, go to a treatment court graduation, and see somebody who has made it through the program. It's a really meaningful experience. That Judge Best is exactly right. It's about resources, and when the General Assembly went through the tough budget in 2008, 2009, 2010, they started to cut a lot of these programs that were working. And counties like Mecklenburg and Wake figured out a way to continue to fund it. Then a lot of rural legislators from a lot of rural counties, red counties, came in and said, well, why should we pay for these nice programs for urban counties if we can't pay for them for across the state? If we can't have it everywhere, why do we need it at all? And so, the counties have been carrying the burden of that. I don't know how Mecklenburg funds theirs. I think Wake County uses their ABC taxes to fund a lot of theirs. But these are programs that work. Are they 100% effective? No. But they do give people, they do put a lot of people on the right path, and not just see you in 6 months. They're checking in with you. They're holding you responsible. If you fail a drug test, there is an immediate punishment for that, and they're trying to keep you. And so I think we need more of that. We need it across the state. And so, again, that's an AOC thing. That's more funding is needed to do that because these programs work. There are also programs to the prison. I have actually seen judges order people to prison at the higher end of the structured sentencing because they were worried if they only sent them for 6 months, there wouldn't be enough time to get them into a DART program, drug, alcohol, rehabilitation, and treatment. So they'll give them a longer sentence just to make sure they can get that DART program because it's a good program. It's not funded enough to have enough beds to do it, and so we need to do that as well. And then there's all the other things that we should be doing about rehabilitation and preparing people to re-enter society. But we should certainly spend that time that they are in custody addressing these underlying substance abuse issues.
Okay, yeah, okay. Before we go to Mr. Shields, you are next, and then Rico and Chris, then you are. I want to introduce Mr. Alonzo Hill. He came in. He's also a candidate for soil and water conservation. He is an urban farmer and practitioner. And I wanted to introduce him, and he is a candidate, so if there is a question for him, you can also. I did invite him to come up front.
I didn't want to disturb anything.
Oh, okay.
But I will.
Sorry for the disruption. Okay, so our next question goes to Ms.
Thank you. I am Bobby Shields, and as much as I would like to ask a question for the water, I will not. I'm going to have a question for the judges. I'm glad we live in a country where we have the three branches of government and the checks and balance. Here lately, I've observed more and more partisanship coming, especially into the judicial area. A lot of people don't recognize it, but it's very big time. And I see a lot of what I believe is tension between the legislative and the judicial branch at all levels of governments now. My question for you, I'm asking you, if you will, in your best judge's voice, what would you tell the legislature, the state legislature? Stop doing it. Just tell them to stop.
I can't comment on that, but we'll say that I, along with Judge Curitan and Kelly Alexander, we are plaintiffs in the case of Alexander versus the North Carolina State Board of Elections, which involved the uniquely drawn sub-districts created for district court judges in Mecklenburg County. So what I have to say, our lawyer has already said, I don't have anything to add to that. I will let my lawsuit speak for itself. And I invite you all to take a look at that. It is still pending at the North Carolina Supreme Court. We're seeking a declaratory judgment. But although Superior Court is in those sub-districts, still District Court is not, because there's some different constitutional parameters. So now judges, we have 8 incoming judges, District Court judges, but for our lawsuit, many of them would not have been able to run because they did not live in an area that had been subdivided. And by the way, that map was found on the hard drive. The Superior Court maps were found on the hard drive. It was emailed to me by a reporter, the same map, and I forget his name, but his daughter is the one that turned over his hard drive to Common Cause that led to our gerrymandering lawsuit. He was considered the father of, what was his name? Of red mapping. Yeah, I can't remember his daughter's name, but it is the hard drive that Common Cause used to overturn our legislative districts to prove that they were gerrymandered. Superior Court districts in urban counties in North Carolina were on there, and the district that I am in, Judge Curitan is in, were literally on this deceased man's hard drive that his Democratic daughter turned over to Common Cause.
So you would say stop.
We are an independent judiciary. But I also believe if the judges don't speak up for ourselves, then who will? We still have too many judges that are scared to speak up, and you have 2 up here who are not afraid and don't back down.
Yay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I have actually been in a courtroom in Wake County where counsel for the legislature has argued that we do not have 3 separate but equal branches of government because the legislative branch is supreme. I have seen them make that argument in court. And so, other than commenting on actual cases that are pending, what I tell you is I think balance is very important. We currently have a 4-3 Democratic majority on the Supreme Court with 2 seats up for election this year. So we'll either continue to have a closely divided court or either we'll have 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. On the Court of Appeals, we have 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats on the Court of Appeals, so it's a 2-1 advantage. We'll either have an 8-7 court after this election or we'll have a 12-3 court. And so that's the voters in this state, their choice. But I think it's very important when you're talking about holding anybody to account that balance is important. So.
You're looking on this corner right here, and everything that we talk about in these forums, it seems like we're deflecting because we don't answer the question directly. But I'm telling you, social media is real, and what they'll do in these forums is find a way for us not to sit on a case because we said certain things or we put our positions this way. That's what happened in the situation with Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls. They were trying to connect her to an NAACP thing because as an advocate for justice, upholding the Constitution, you know, we want to be able to, in our judicial voices you've called upon, to say certain things. But the minute we do, the minute we zip up the road, they're trying to snatch it. And I'm telling you, you want us on the bench. You want us not to be able to say, I'm sorry, I got to recuse because of this conversation. But my heart is just like racing because, yeah, I want to get in there and say all these things. But running for a judicial race is not sexy. We don't get to say fight power for this, that, and the third. We have to stay independent of what's going on in the legislative branch because if it comes across our desk, we have to have our eye on justice, a clear eye toward balance, a clear eye toward what's before us so that we are the fair and impartial judges rendering rulings. So, yes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, we are running out of time, so I'm going to ask, if you have a question, that you ask it as quickly as possible, and maybe everyone not answer, and maybe keep your answers extremely brief, maybe 30 seconds or less. I know you can't do less than 30 seconds. And I'm really sorry, but we are running out of time here. Okay, Miko.
My question was back. You're running up against Michael State as a former leader. What is it that you want to do different that he done if he asked for Mecklenburg County to get behind you and support you? And then my other question is Judge Kierkegaard and Best. What is it that y'all would want us to know about you, separate from anything, to continue to support you? I support y'all anyway, you know.
What about me? To get to know me. Well, before we leave here, you're going to know me.
So I don't know Judge Stodden very well. He comes to a couple of forums, but not a lot of things like this. I don't see him show up. Doesn't respond to a lot of things. So I would say this. I know that I have not only appellate experience the last 20 months being the judge, but before I was a judge, I had actually argued cases in front of the Court of Appeals. I had argued cases in front of the North Carolina Supreme Court. I had argued cases in front of the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. I don't believe that Judge Stadney has any appellate experience at all. And so I think probably reading between the tea leaves of what Judge Best said, Judge Stadney got one of these seats that was, I can say it, gerrymandered to elect a Republican. And then Kelly Alexander and some other folks took them to court, and the legislature backed down. And at least on the district court seats, they redrew them. And Judge Stodden probably didn't feel like he had a chance to win running countywide in Mecklenburg County, so he picked a different seat to run for, is my guess. But I think if you just look at our experience for appellate experience. I got you. Well, yeah, but that's the difference, right? Experience matters. I mean, my little brochure. Experience matters.
Okay. Now I think it was
Judge Peterson and Best.
If y'all could do just maybe because we know you.
I'm an adoptive mom, lived experience, and I'm fair and just and practiced in every courtroom. And that's all I'll say. Many of you have seen my little one. Yeah, I've had to bring him to forums. And so I think that's the important part, especially my lived experience being a native of Detroit, growing up during the 80s in that particular location. And because of my family history that I've shared with you, there's nothing that comes before me that I either haven't seen firsthand or have had a family member experience, unfortunately or fortunately.
So I know oftentimes people will say, okay, I'm from Charlotte, right? And it's a way to create a nexus between us in you. But the reality is, yes, I'm from Charlotte. And what it means for me to be able to do this work for the people that I've grown up with, that I know are proud to see me in this seat, it really makes a difference. I'm married. It'll be 18 years at the end of this month. I have a 9-year-old daughter, almost 10. Being a husband and a father is everything to me. And I know that's what the people who stand in front of me, it matters to them as well. They want to just be able to grow up in this community, be safe, get a good education, be able to provide for themselves. And all I want to do is, if I can, is to make sure that that dream is realized. But it's a challenge, yes, because there's so many different factors that come into play. But when you are supporting someone like me and Judge Best, we recognize that and we appreciate that, and all of our decisions take that into account. So that's what I hope you leave in terms of what you find out about us. Thank you.
Okay, I have Rashid.
Oh, my question for soil and water. I just wanted to ask, like, what are you guys working on right now to like ensure sustainability in like Mecklenburg County, as far as like with climate change and everything? Like, how are you going to work to make sure everything is sustainable for the future?
That's an excellent question. That focus in making us relevant to the climate change world. One thing I will say is, when people ask me my position on climate change, I say I don't have a position, because whether I believe in it or not, it exists. The districts, there's 3,000 of us in the United States, were founded based on dealing with extreme weather. So everything about our programs, which are voluntary, deal with how do we remediate stream banks and land and so forth to minimize soil erosion, to steal from the effects of climate change. So everything about what we do really answers your question. The challenge we have is always, we have no budget. We literally get $30,000 from the division, meaning North Carolina, Department of Ag is our sort of a food chain. The rest comes from City of Charlotte and so forth. So we have, to your point, been able to increase our budget from when I joined it was about 200,000, which was cobbling in different things to do some existing programs, to now over $500,000 because of the work of Nancy and I have done to get grants and so forth and add capacity, right? There's always an inverse relationship between what you want to do and what you can afford. With that in mind, one of the first things that we did with our grant dollars was create a stream care guide so that we could empower landowners, HOAs to know things that they can do maybe on their own without having to spend money, right? So that was the goal of the guide. It's in a pilot form. We're trying to translate it in different languages, but all that takes money, right? The other thing that we're doing is we continue to expand we call them our cost share programs on the streams that we talked about. We've been able to get some agreements, thank you, with municipalities. So we work in backyards where sewer laterals are exposed. That's going to be everywhere. So we have a solution for that, and we have money to help do that. So that gets to somewhat of what you're talking about. And then the farmland preservation plan that I discussed earlier talks about sustainable agricultural practices. Did you have one?
Yeah, we have a bully pullet. We're elected. I served on city council with my colleague, David Howard, back there. And we worked sincerely on the environment, founding the Environment Committee with Susan Burgess and Patsy Kinsey, looking at CAP. Because of the soil and water, I was there working with Sustainable Energy Action Plan for the City of Charlotte, and I'm continuing on that. I'm on the accountability, seeing that the city is doing what it wants to do and needs to do. So we have a bully pulpit where we can stand up and say, this is right. But we're also teaching children what that means, showing them what environmental conservation means, and empowering them with their knowledge to look at different careers, to look at what they can do in their family, and then take this competition that they've entered, the Envirothon, go to the state. We fund these things for our children, their teams here in Mecklenburg. We send a youngster to North Carolina State for a week to learn about conservation and what we can do for the environment. We act on what we believe, as much as we have money for it. But we have will too, and a mouth.
And me, myself, I'm new. I'm coming in here. This is my first time running for office. But I have been in the community. I've been with the U City Family Zone, as well as worked at several schools with CMS, and actually encouraging gardening and health, because health is one of my main focuses. I was a former engineer, so I was very good at troubleshooting, and I've taken the same troubleshooting skills from my engineering into my health practice now. I'm also a climate ambassador, so and looking at the climate as well. So everything that I do is about affecting change and actually encouraging change and actually looking for solutions to fix problems versus putting a Band-Aid on it. So I'm very solution oriented, and so what I plan to bring is change and a new vision and another voice for actually the people out here that I've been serving with since I've been here in Charlotte, helping folks, whether it be planting gardens, whether work with the Rosa Parks Farmers Market and other markets in the area, University City Farmers Market. So all of these folks that I'm connected to, I see their needs and I see the things that they are asking for. And I hope to be in a position where I can actually help them get some of those things and make change in the soil and water.
Okay, and this young man, I don't know your name. But
my name's Keith Williams. Okay, first of all, so Mecklenburg, soil and water. I'm a chemist. The soil is really important to maintain. Okay, I just had to go ahead and throw that out there. But as far as the judges, I'm a law enforcement officer. I've been a law enforcement officer for about 16 years. Okay, and one thing about it is that I believe in this wholeheartedly. You know, he who has authority must yield to authority. And the whole point of that is saying that the people who's in front of you are the people you know, is either you judge and you sit on a high bench or you serve. Me personally, I don't believe in politicians. I think politicians designed to just get power. But I do believe in public service. And as a law enforcement officer, I believe in serving the people. I don't believe in going out there and taking that authority.
You have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But the question I have for you is that when people are in front of you and you have the large organizations like Monsanto, or you have a small farmer, how do you go out there and make sure it's a balanced field instead of just dealing with the political pressure that it comes with, and make sure that that the people are served at the end? And that's a really quick question. It's a broad question, but it is a very in-depth question for me to understand.
It's really broad. And we are running out of time.
Yes.
So could I get maybe one person to answer that question and can answer it very briefly? I know it's hard to answer that question briefly, but
it doesn't matter if you're the millionaire or you're the small farmer. When you come into court, you expect your fair shot at every avenue that the court can give back to the situation. You don't need to come in and say, well, because I'm the small farmer or I'm up against this company, that I have a losing shot. When you look at our judges that are on this panel, you best know that we are always going to do the right thing, upholding the laws and the Constitution fairly across the board. That's the bottom line up front.
Okay, I'm going to have to. I'm gonna have to bring it to a close because these folks have to go to court this morning. Okay, so I'm sorry if you didn't get to answer your second question and all of that, but we try to give everybody a chance to ask their first question. I'm going to give each person 1 minute to give a closing statement, and I think you really got to leave it now.
Yes, ma'am. I got to go to Monroe. I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to come before you. I drove in from Oxford, North Carolina for the very voter, just like the one on the back, who says she doesn't know. You cannot get to the ballot and say, because I don't know you, I'm not going to vote for you. I'm telling you, don't leave anything uncircled because that's a vote for the other party. I'm the only one for seat 8 with legal experience and trial experience for seat 8, which is the open seat. I haven't always sat on the bench and argued in front of the bench. I've remained active in my community, to include being a volunteer teen court judge, licensed and ordained minister. I have a domestic violence nonprofit that I run because we've got to stop saying stay and pray, which re-victimizes victims and send them back to their home. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll leave my material here. Hook me up, look me up, so you understand where I'm coming from.
Okay, thank you. Say your party too, because I think now we say what parties, but the judges have to announce their party.
No, we don't. I don't want to be part of it. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter about our party affiliations. Look at our background and look at our work history and look what we bring to the table. We cannot tote the water for the parties. We've got to tote the information to the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Say this for us, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I got to get to Monroe.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm taking a
God
rest.
bless y'all.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have a minute. I think you all, you know me. I've been around. I've lived in Charlotte for 25 years, and I've served for 15 years. The only thing I want to leave you with are 3 words, and I think I've already shared them. One is I am a mother of a child in CMS, a little 6-year-old. I have lived experience, and I am fair and just, and have been so for the past 15 years. I do have a couple of minutes, so I may be in the back to grab some coffee before I leave to answer some questions. But I thank you all for allowing me to be here as usual. I've been around since 2008. And I look forward to continuing to serve you because my motto, I believe in servant leadership. And so I look forward to continuing to serve you all. And thank you, Tuesday Morning, for doing what you do.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and listening this morning. Darren Jackson, 25 years of experience in trial courts all across the state, 12 years of experience in the General Assembly, and now been on the Court of Appeals for about 20 months. I like the job. I'd like to keep it. I am a Democrat, and I also want to put in a plug. We have 2 Democratic Supreme Court justices running for Supreme Court. Sam J. Irvin IV, he's holding court this morning down in Edenton. The Supreme Court is meeting in the historic courtroom in Edenton. And then Judge Lucy Inman, who's running for an open seat on Supreme Court. They both asked me to mention their names, and hopefully they will get to join with you before the election. But I told them I would pass that along. But thank you for having me.
Well, yes, I'm Alonzo Hill, running for Soil and Water. Thank you for allowing me to be here to speak, but I hope to make change. That's what I'm here for. I've been out in the community. I know what the community it needs, and I want to be a voice for the community, especially for the farmers that work in soil and water. And also by me being a North Carolina climate ambassador as well, I'm very committed to making change in our environment, and I know what the environment needs to change as far as and how it connects with our health. So I want to incorporate those things in some of the decisions that I help make with soil and water. And thank you for having me. Appreciate you, folks.
And I'm Donald Curitan Jr., again, District Court Judge, running for Superior Court District 26A. I really do appreciate the time that you all take every week to come out and get informed and have these conversations, these other kind of conversations that help propel us into the next evolution of a community, as well as how we're going to function politically. And again, I just appreciate your time. And if you don't live in my district, please tell someone that may. Again, Mint Hill, Matthews, Myers Park, Eastover, and a little bit of South Charlotte. Thank you.
Barbara Bleiweiss, Mecklenburg Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor, looking for my second 4-year term. Appreciated your confidence in the past and hope to go forward, especially with farmland preservation. The program that I started in 2018 has a real chance of passing, which would provide land access, new farms, jobs, food security for the entire region. It's a tremendous opportunity, and I hope to get your confidence to take it over the finish line. Thank you.
I'm Nancy Carter. For the last 23 years, I've served in this area. We've lived here for 46 years when my husband came. I wish to serve. So what I'm going to do is ask you to take word out. The city has neighborhood grants. I got the staff to recognize that we have value. You can use that neighborhood grant to work on a stream in your neighborhood. If it's flowing, if the soil is flowing downstream, you don't want that, and we can come and help. It's a competitive grant, and you all have to match the funds that we give, so you can use that city grant and volunteer hours to work change in your neighborhood. I'd like to help you. I'd like your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're all good. I'm going to close by saying that it's so important to have the judges here and the soil and water, because these are the non-sexy jobs that that you don't see every day, because they're actually in court doing their jobs. And so you don't see them, but when you see them, it makes a difference. And you're going to look for them on that ballot. You're going to go down to the end and you're going to say, oh, I remember Darren Jackson. That's it, right? Okay. Because he was here at the Tuesday Forum, and I'm going to give him a vote. I want to remember Kimberly Beth. So that's the kind of thing we need to see. We need to see you in forums like this. And I know you do this during time. And we're going to respect the fact that you got to get in court. So thank you so much. I'm going to let David Howard make an announcement about next week right quick before we dismiss.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
I just want to let you know I'm part of the bond committee for the city this year. There are city bonds on the referendum in November. I'll be back next week to tell explain more about it. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and we need to know about those bonds. We see those bonds, and a lot of times we just click yes, but we don't really know what's what. So that's great. But thank you so much, and please come back and tackle the bill.